Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. From the comics, TV, and movies, we'll go from the Mojoverse to Earth 616 to the Null Time Zone to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I am the Uncanny Chris.
And I am your friendly neighborhood Brett.
Alliance, assemble.
Symbol.
Volume 50, the big 5-0. We finally made it.
Congratulations on getting there since you've, been here the whole time.
Well, thank you. We're all part of this. So, yep, we hit the big 5-0. I know our DC brethren hit it a little bit before us because we decided to take a little break over the Christmas holidays, but we made it. We're here, and we may be 50, but we're coming up to that big 1-year network celebration. So, how you doing How you doing so far this week, Brent?
It's my busiest week at work of the year, so I'm pretty shot. And my voice is super hoarse because I've had this horrible cough. So that's why I sound very different. But I wanted to be here for number 50. I did not want to miss out on that. Plus, we got some good stuff to talk about, and I didn't want to miss it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, this, we both you're in one field of education, the tech side. I'm on the administration side. So we've got exams going underway, wrapping up the year. This weekend had a bunch, what was it? Baby showers, get-togethers, going away parties. So you COVID disappears and everyone wants to get together.
Yeah. It's the time of year for it.
Yep. But all right, well, since we got a big show tonight, let's get the plugs out of the way. So we are part of the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network with 9 shows coming at you 7 days a week. So we've got, starting off the week, World's Finest True Believers, my show. We dropped a new episode this week looking at the illustrious Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition YouTube channel. He joined me for the very first time looking at his all-time favorite graphic novel, X-Men God Loves, Man Kills.
Classic.
Yep. If you are a listener of his channel, he prides himself that is his go-to for any recommendation for X-Men. We did a huge deep dive into it. It was a lot of fun, so check that out. I know we had a little bit of problems with Apple Podcast on Monday morning. By the evening, it finally dropped on the feed. So if you're an Apple Podcast listener, it should be there in the feeds if you already don't subscribe to the channel itself. So we apologize about that, but Apple does some funny things, right, Brent?
Yeah, we over on Fans Without Borders had the same problem and found apparently DC Film Squadcast had this issue, which I'm surprised I didn't hear about that one. And it's just some Apple nonsense. Let's call it what it is. Apple nonsense. I love them, but this is nonsense, and it's kind of affecting us all.
Yep. So we'll just have to work our way through it. But then we've got our DC brethren, DC Alliance. We got Marvel Alliance. We've got Star Wars Alliance, Slice of Film, and Ranger Alliance, which officially next week they will debut in what has been for the past year the world's finest retro spot. So they will be joining the Monday spot on alternate weeks. So 1 week you'll get new episodes of World's Finest, and then the off week for me, you will get new episodes of Ranger Alliance. So on Monday, you will get that at joining up. And then we got Star Wars Alliance, Ranger Alliance, Slice of Film on Thursday. So it goes back to Katie's Day on Thursday, superhero discussions on Friday, and Weird Science, Marvel, and DC Roundup. So looking at all the comic news as well. We've got a Patreon. So if you got any, want to throw a couple of shekels our way, we've got 2 tiers, $1 tier, our tip jar saying, hey, we're doing well. And we've got the $5 tier saying we've got exclusive episodes, ad-free episodes, early access episodes. I know Last Ronin is dropping number 3 this week, and I know the guys who have been doing that will be putting out a Patreon, so I am going to do whatever I can to join that one since I have finally caught up. I've loved that series. It's going really well. A lot of sadness with the series, so definitely looking forward to seeing what's next down that line. And so we appreciate our patrons, and for those of you who can't join us on Patreon, we understand, but if you got 30 to 90 seconds, we'd like if you can give us that 5-star review on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We appreciate it, and thank you very much. And let me give our official sponsor for the show, organicpricebooks.com. Pull up the stream. Organicpricebooks.com. Anything you want for your omnibus, your collected editions, hardcovers, trade paperbacks. JP and organicpricebooks.com is where you want to be shopping at. He just had the new solicits drop, so you got a month to get your pre-orders in. Got a couple of reprints coming at you. Mutant Massacre Omnibus is being reprinted. Wolverine and the X-Men is being reprinted. We got a new volume of What If. So check that out. Great discounts. It's got it all from Independence, Marvel, and DC. So again, great packaging. I know Travis just got this one. I just got this from JP the other day. All new Wolverine, Tom Taylor, X-23, Laura. Amazing run. Outstanding run.
Yes.
So again, are you down with the OPB? I know I am. So again, thank you, JP and organicpricebooks.com as our official sponsor. And don't forget to use that code at checkout, Marvel GUA, for $2 off every single order. So check that out. And as always, thank you very much. So let me change this out. All right. So, well, we've got a trailer. And I think we both were kind of surprised that they decided to drop this. I think we both were thinking Black Widow was going to be our first kind of view of this trailer.
Yeah, and
Oh, well, hold on. Before we get to that, I do have to do a plug for our Geekverse Brethren, the charity stream.
Of course.
So yeah, Geekverse is doing, I believe, next weekend, June 5th, they are doing a charity stream for I'm going to make sure to get this right, charity stream to raise awareness and money for the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. The goal is $500. They're going to be having a whole day of games, all these different kind of streams, and they just found out they will be allowed to do this in person for the first time. They'll all be together for the first time in 7 months. So they're going to be very, very excited to do that. So check that stream out next week. And also a reminder for this show, in 2 weeks, we will be moving from going live Tuesday nights to going live Thursday nights with the premiere of Loki. So we'll remind you next week for that, but just be prepared for that switch in the schedule. So, all right, now getting back to the fun.
Yeah, so Eternals trailer. I kind of thought this would come up like early July, right before Black Widow. And I've kind of got questions on why bother to drop it this early, but I'm not complaining. I'm finally getting to see some of the footage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was interesting. We again hearing rumors throughout the weekend, trailer dropping. Someone tried to, I think Daniel RPK was kind of said that he said this, but he came out and said, I never said anything about Eternals. So, but
yeah, but there were 2 or 3 people just kind of like before that Welcome Back to the Movies promo a couple of weeks ago, just chatter. There started being more and more chatter, and more people were expecting it. So about Saturday or Sunday, I started to think, oh, this might actually happen.
Yeah. So, all right. So I'm going to cue this up. We may stop at certain points. I've got a probably going to do more of my notes towards the end, more watch it at this point. At the end is, if you kind of see our background, it's kind of hard to see. We will probably stop at the group shot and kind of go over, because most of the general audience has no clue, and maybe a lot of comic book fans have no clue who the Eternals are. So I'll kind of drop a little bit of knowledge on you and give some kind of theories of where they place themselves in the MCU. So let me cue that up. And as always, this is the view we're going to have to do this with, no sound, but feel free to shout, Brandon, if you want to stop at certain points, and we'll kind of talk our way through this. So the song, I believe it's the End of the World by Skeeter Davis. It's kind of interesting as we see kind of these, I wouldn't call them cavemen, but kind of, in a sense, nomadic people.
Yeah,
and
nomadic.
We see this kind of ship approaching, and out of nowhere. And really, this is where we get our introduction to Icarus. And oh man, I lost it.
Black Knight.
Circe.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. it's kind of like when we say like the end of the world being the song, it's kind of like the end of these people's world because they just got their mind blown that these people just come out of nowhere they've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So seriously played by Gemma Chan.
MCU returning MCU
Yes.
alumni since she
Mhm.
was in Captain Marvel.
She was. So you see them kind of doing that, and you can't hear it now. And I tried to find one that had closed captioning, so I'm sorry, but the voiceover is coming from one of the other members of the Eternals. Selma Hayek's character is doing the voiceover, basically saying like they are not interfering, they are guiding. We get our first kind of close-up look at um, Angelina Jolie in action. And see if I can pause it just a bit. We got our it's very quick, but
On
it's
that shield.
on that shield.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get it.
So what he's trying to grab here is
Ah,
during this action shot is a blink and you miss it look at what appears to
basically.
be a homemade version of a Captain America shield. Not John Walker style, a little bit higher quality than that, but it's not the shield, but it's another shield that was like
Yeah,
painted in a similar way.
yeah, it's going to be very tough because, like you said, it's blink if you miss it. You can finally see the screenshots. You can look them up later, but it definitely has a very visible star in the middle. So people saying, "Oh, to Captain America when he's going back, get stuck here." I don't think it's that. A lot of people say, again, as we'll see with these, the Eternals have been, quote unquote, the story has been told over and over through the history. This is a different kind of story, as you'll see. All right, so this kind of group shot here, they're lining up trying to face someone down. And so with the history of the Eternals, a little bit right here, their kind of quote unquote enemy are called the Deviants.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get into more of the history as we get to the group shot later because we'll stop and I'll kind of forget to start doing the trailer. But the question is, all right, here this is supposed to be taking place in Sumeria. This is the ancient city of Babylon. So it looks to be the Eternals have had some quote unquote guidance in guiding humanity to this area. And in a better shot, if you blow it up, these are the famous hanging gardens of Babylon. Mesopotamia was known as the lifeblood, the kind of the fertile crescent of mankind at that point. So November, we're still sticking with that. So
yeah, I don't think that's changing.
Yeah. So we see kind of a juxtaposition of Circe here and then here. So we're going through some time, obviously. All right. This is going to be a theory I'm going to have this is an Eternal. His name, going back to my notes, his name is Druig. And I think as we go to later on, I think he's going to be more of an antagonist and the kind of a villain amongst the Eternals.
Yes, that is likely. He is sort of he's a common enemy. He makes me think of like Loki with the Asgardians, or oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his name now. And with the Inhumans, Maximus.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
With the Inhumans, where he's one of them, but he's not really one of them.
Yeah, and what they're doing here, the theory going right now, when it's kind of get ready for Captain Planet and the Planeteers, the Eternals, when they kind of combine their quote unquote powers, led by the Prime Eternal, they get to basically become what's known as the Unimind. They're probably most powerful kind of. Basically, you can't knock this thing down. So that's the theory. They're all kind of combining their powers to stop some sort of force.
Yeah, it lets them join their power, their will, their intelligence in force. So yeah, if you want to call it Captain Planet, I'm not going to argue with you.
So we see our kind of a close-up view of Kumail Nanjiani in his, he is in the real, quote unquote, real world. He is a Bollywood actor star, big star at that point. So he did say there would be some Bollywood dancing, some scenes of that celebrating the Bollywood culture, Bollywood movies. All right, we get our first kind of look at Kit Harington playing Black Knight. And he's got a very interesting history. And people would say, well, this doesn't seem like an Eternal. Well, he has a big connection to him. Kit Harington As we all know, as many of us know him from his Game of Thrones fame,
Mm.
Mr. Snow at that point. With Black Knight, he is playing Dane Whitman. He is the latest incarnation of the Black Knight. Black Knight has dated back all the way to basically the Knights of the Round Table. The original Black Knight was Sir Percy. The blade he wields is called the Ebony Blade, forged by Merlin. In the comics, Doctor Strange helps him find it, but because the sword is cursed, it drives him a little crazy. And back in the 80s and 90s, he trades out the Ebony Blade for basically what I like to call a lightsaber. But he does have a flying horse. The reason he's connected to the Eternals in the comics is he and Cersei basically are lovers, and she basically grants him eternal life. And so that is the connection to him. Now, we basically have seen in this trailer that Icarus and Cersei look to be kind of lovers in this sense. So not saying she can't change hands and it can't change, but, that's why Black Knight's kind of brought into this. But we don't see him in costume. We just see Kit Harington.
And worth noting, in the comics, both Cersei and Black Knight have been Avengers off and on.
Mm-hmm.
So they do have, in the comics at least, they have that connection as well. In
And
fact, she's like the one Eternal people maybe know anything about before all this.
It was the Avengers era of the brown leather jackets, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds right.
All right, so here's our kind of hero shot. We'll go back to that in a little bit. And even though you can't hear it, this is like with every Marvel movie, with every Marvel trailer. They're around the table and they're all together, and characters saying, who's going to lead the Avengers now that Captain Rogers and Iron Man are gone? And Icarus says, I'll lead them.
I find it interesting that Sprite says Captain Rogers, not Captain America, and Iron Man, not Tony Stark.
Yeah, I think some of the theories maybe that is how Sprite knows him. Originally is introduced as Captain Steve Rogers, since Sprite is technically over 1,000 years old, even though Sprite continues to look like a child. So there's some ongoing theories about that plays into where have they been this whole time. So let me kind of pause on this group shot. All right. So going from left to right, so we kind of know who our main players are. So starting over here, we've got Kingo, played by Kumail Nanjiani, an Eternal with the power to project cosmic energy projectiles with his hands. Over his centuries, he has become enamored with the idea of fame. Present day, he's a famous Bollywood actor. Makari, played by Lauren Ridloff. She is the fastest woman in the universe. She uses her cosmic-powered super speed to scout planets for the Eternals, and as the only deaf Eternal, and the actress is deaf in real life, the sonic boom that accompanies her cosmic running does not affect her. Gilgamesh, played by Modong Siok. He is the strongest and kindest member of the team, capable of projecting a powerful exoskeleton of cosmic energy. Gilgamesh is a fierce warrior who has become legendary for his fights with deviants throughout history. Thena, Angelina Jolie. Thena is a fierce warrior, more comfortable in battle than any other place. She has the ability to use cosmic energy to form any handheld weapon she can think of. Often, surely, and aloof, she forges an unlikely friendship with Gilgamesh that spans centuries. In the comics, she is a direct cousin to Thanos. Let's go up. Then we've got Icarus, played by Richard Madden. Icarus is the tactical leader and most powerful Eternal, and takes pride in keeping the other Eternals safe. Moral, kind, and charismatic Icarus boasts the power of incredible strength, flight, and the ability to project beams of intense cosmic energy. Ajax, played by Selma Hayek. Ajax is spiritual leader of the Eternals. Her wisdom has helped guide the team since they arrived from their home planet to help defend humanity. Ajax can not only heal humans and Eternals alike, but she is able to communicate with the Celestials as well. She is the only one that can communicate with all the team. Cersei, played, as we said, by Gemma Chan. Cersei is the Eternal with the affinity for humanity. Cersei has the ability to manipulate matter, changing the makeup of any non-sentient matter she touches. So that was her touching the ground and turning the dust in, or the ground, into water. She's also been in love with Icarus for centuries. Sprite, played by Leah McHugh. Sprite has the ability to cast lifelike illusions. Her friendship with Cersei hides a world-weary sadness because she's been treated like a child by humanity for centuries. But Sprite is much stronger and clever than she appears. Fastos, played by Brian Tyree Henry. Fastos is blessed with the power of invention. He is also able to create whatever he can imagine, provided that he has enough raw materials at his disposal. Over the centuries, he has helped nudge humanity forward technologically while always keeping his brilliance hidden. And finally, Druid Barry Keogh Han. Druid can use cosmic energy to control the minds of men. Druid has become withdrawn from the other Eternals because he disagrees with how they've interacted with mankind over the centuries. And you can kind of see that during the trailer. In the comics, he views that the Eternals are obviously much better than the humankind, and humankind should be subservient to them, and they should be treated as such. So you can kind of see that in some of the sequences. So those are our kind of main casts with it. What are your kind of thoughts on this trailer, or basically a teaser?
I mean, it's just a teaser at this point. We didn't get anything of the actual story, but it gave me enough. We saw some visuals. We got to see some of Chloe Zhao's style. It does look different than most other Marvel movies. And I'm not saying every other Marvel movie looks the same. I don't subscribe to that, but this looks different than the other ones. It is still a new style to the MCU. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I want to know what they're going to do with the Celestials. I feel like they have to be mentioned. The Celestials, whom we've sort of seen already in Guardians, Nowhere is the head of a Celestial. And then you see some in the history lesson about the Infinity Stones in Guardians 1. Well, the Celestials created the Eternals. They created the Deviants. And so kind of want to know if they're going to come about. And the Celestials also later, this was a retcon, gave the ability for mankind to basically gave the ability for mutation. So I still think we're going to hear the word mutants for the first time in this movie.
Yeah, that kind of how that works is they basically, that's kind of, you remember in the trailer, they're all kind of looking up and kind of seeing something going on in the sky. Well, so in comic history, when the Celestials that came down, the first one is they are known as hosts. When the first one came to Earth, that host created Deviants. The second time they created Eternals. The third time, in which is what is possibly being hinted at, they will be coming to judge whether Earth is worthy or not. If they judge it as not worthy, if you remember the history lesson from Guardians, they just wipe them out. So like you said, the Celestials supposedly, at least in the comics, like you said, a retcon gave the Celestial gene in all the humans so that if, when activated, they could become superpowered. That could be our entry point for the X-Men at that point, which would be a very kind of quick and easy way to do it. I think you and I have had the theory going on for a while along other people that this could be how we're getting mutants into the MCU.
Yeah, and then of course there's the Thanos connection, he's not a Celestial, but he's a in deviant. The comics, he's sort of considered both. Like he's the product of both a deviant and an Eternal's DNA being mixed together. And so will we see more from him? I don't know, but he is still a connection. And I want to hear, I know a lot of people suddenly they're like, it's like they just learned that the Eternals has been around as long as they have. And they're like, well, why didn't they help with the Battle of New York? Why didn't they help with Sokovia? Why did they help with Infinity War? I have those questions too. I would like to hear the answer.
Yeah, my theory is going on. They are going to be at least taking parts of Neil Gaiman's miniseries, in which the Eternals have forgotten their past, and this was due in part to Sprite gotten tired of being treated like a child, and basically led to something happening where they basically forgot who they were. And it seems to be possibly either Sprite or Cersei. My guess is Cersei is going to be the first one to wake up. And as she goes and they start searching each other out, they start remembering. Okay, yes, people say, oh, is that really all it is? Hey, you may not like it, but that's kind of how it does. and it's a quick and easy way to say, why weren't they around when Thanos was here? Well, there you go. Some of them might have gotten dusted. Who knows? Just because they're eternal didn't mean that they necessarily, quote unquote, were immune from the snap.
Right. I mean, if it was half of all life, presumably that could include them. I want to know the answer, but I'm not going to say, like, if that's what it is. I'm like, okay, well, they're pulling a storyline from the comics. They've answered it for me. Whether or not I'll like the execution of it, I won't know until November. But I would be shocked if we actually found out in trailers prior to the movie. Like, feels like something the movie should tell us.
I think so too, and it'll keep the Sabon Sanchez baby Thanos again, like we said in the comics. Angelina Jolie's character is the direct cousin of Thanos. You also say, I think there is some sort of trailer misdirect with Druig. Very much true, but in the comics, he is very much an antagonist for him. He's tried to take out, quote unquote, the Prime Eternal. I believe his name was. I think I wrote this down. Where was it? Nope, didn't write it down. Yeah, there we go. Zeros. In the comics, he tried to take him out to become the new Prime Eternal to control Unimind, because the Unimind can only be done with the Prime Eternal. Tony's in the chat. From what we have seen from this trailer, what other comic book movies would you compare it to? Seems interesting. Can't say for better or worse. It's interesting when I saw a lot of the reaction online, at least on Twitter, and even on some of the Facebook groups I'm on. I saw more people who are kind of, now I wouldn't say anti-Marvel, but they kind of like roll their eyes at some of the Marvel movies and things like that. They really gravitated to this trailer, and it was rather interesting. It was, some people were saying has, quote unquote, kind of it just doesn't come off as your typical superhero movie. And I think that's maybe what's intriguing some people.
Yeah, I don't really know what other comic movie I would compare it to directly. I can't think of one right now, but it's a new director with a very distinct visual style coming to the MCU. It's going to look different.
I'm trying to think of anything else I wanted to point out. The power that they use is called the power cosmic, which is we heard in WandaVision talk about cosmic energy. This may be a tie-in to Wanda and the Infinity Stones. It was interesting though, when
they use the power cosmic.
That is what it's called in the comics. Yeah, the power cosmic.
So it's the same stuff that Silver Surfer and Galactus use.
Correct.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So there you go with possibly a Fantastic Four connection. The volcano exploding in the trailer. A lot of theories been going around like that. We know in Loki, he makes an appearance at Pompeii. It could be Pompeii, or here's another one for you. Could it be in the comics? They also had a huge war between the Deviants and the Eternals, which led to the sinking of Lumeria, which is the lost city of Atlantis.
That'd be interesting. I mean, they're going to bring him in at some point, Namor. So that would certainly be a way to do it.
And finally, the last thing I saw, kind of like going back through kind of press stuff, Kumail had said during some of the early press for when they were talking about the Eternals, he'd said that they're not from Earth and they were sent to protect humanity from the Deviants. So the question is, where are they from? If we're deviating from the comics that they weren't here, they were brought here as we see the ship. Could they be from Titan?
I mean, that would match the Thanos connection.
Mm-hmm. So it'd be interesting to see exactly why, what could be going on with that. But it was a very kind of, like I said, it wasn't your typical kind of MCU trailer with a lot of, we have some action scene, but I think this was a lot more kind of introducing us, because this is a very big cast. This is probably next to your, again, it's a team up movie, but this is a group together anyways. It's not like Avengers, like we all come together. Like they're part of this group, they're part of this team. So definitely probably one of the biggest assemblings for the MCU in one movie.
For introducing new characters, yeah, it'd have to be the largest ensemble piece they've had yet.
So a lot of moving pieces, a lot of history going to be there. So again, this will be November. So this is our teaser. So since we got this teaser, I don't expect to probably see a full trailer until Shang-Chi, because that would be September at that point. So that gives it 2 months to see our next full trailer, if not right before. Maybe in August we might see it.
I could see that. I could see August.
Yeah. So, but any more thoughts on the trailer? I want to make sure we had uh, John asking about the ship. So yes, hopefully we answered your question, John, about that with the ship.
And yeah, at this point, I'm still more looking towards Loki and Black Widow
Hmm.
and Shang-Chi. For me, Eternals is still like so far down.
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about it.
I think again, it's just like it's probably the first one that even comic book fans are just like, unless you have been deep into Jack Kirby, Neil Gaiman's run, and things like that, it's not one that people can say, "Oh yeah, I'm an Icarus fan." I'm a, like you said, Cersei's been, kind of links it up. Like probably one of these Eternals, maybe Cersei, maybe someone else will be linked up with the Avengers soon enough.
Yeah.
So, but all right, before we get to our other part of our main topic, we're going to take our first ad break. So, listeners, these ads help keep the Geek Ultimate Alliance network, the lights on. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they could be a bit loud. So, we're going to give you that 3 count to turn that volume down so you can save those eardrums. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. All right. So what was going to be our our main topic? We got 2 tonight. We had, as we promised, we had Hulu premiered MODOK, and to Brent and my little bit of surprise, we were more theorizing that maybe a couple of episodes. Hulu's not one to usually drop full episode counts necessarily. Well, they dropped it all on Friday. I know you've got about 4 episodes in.
Yeah, 4.
I just binged it just because they're short episodes. They were one of the I had a kind of a free couple of hours just to kind of watch it. This will be the only time that we're going to be talking about it, just because with other things coming up, I don't know if we get all the way through it. I don't know your schedule, Brent, how quickly you're going to get through it at that point.
Not fast, if I'm being honest. And not that I didn't enjoy it, it's just it's not going to be a high priority over the next few weeks for me.
Well, based on what you saw from your first 4 episodes, what are your high level thoughts?
I think for me, it's a hard one to binge. It's a lot to take in. It's not an animation style I'm normally drawn to. They're clearly doing a good job with it. There are some deep cuts, some deep pulls. I guess potential spoilers for the first 4 episodes, but I mean, you saw like Mr. Sinister in the background on one of them, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And just some deep stuff like that. And I'm like, that's not a character you see very often. Or and that same episode referenced the bar with no name, but
Yeah.
it's funny. It's a million jokes, and I feel like they're not all landing for me. But out of every 2 or 3, like one of them legitimately I think is pretty good. And on a show like this, that's not bad. I mean, there was a joke in the first one about Iron Man's boot and MODOK's marital bed that just killed me. And so
Yeah.
I do enjoy it. It's just being the type of style it is. I can't get to very many of them. I can't watch it a ton at one time. Last night I intended to watch 2 or 3. Then my kid got up early or got up out of bed when he wasn't supposed to, and that kind of derailed things.
Makes sense. We all got, those parental things. If I go through the night without waking up once with one of my kids, that I can totally understand that. Yes, Sawbones Sanchez got it right. It's Marvel's Robot Chicken. Yeah, it's in the exact same style. They're using the same company that does Robot Chicken. And kind of with that idea, I like Robot Chicken. I watch them more just kind of sporadically at that point. But I enjoyed what I saw. I saw a lot of high praise for it. A lot of people saying, I think we talked about how Murphy's Multiverse had gotten an early look at it and saying it'd be one of the best shows Marvel has put out. I'm personally not there. I think it's clever. I think it has some good. I had some good chuckles, a couple of really laugh out loud moments, but it could have been just because I binged it all at one point. It wasn't forcing it. I did enjoy what I saw. It's a lot of. It's definitely very rated R. Do not watch it with your children. This is not one. But they don't shy away from it. They kind of lean into it. And I think maybe on another rewatch. I definitely think I'm going to give this another rewatch at that point, but I don't think it's going to edge it up that high in my book of saying one of the best Marvel shows I've seen. I'm glad that as they were pretty honest, they were pretty far along in the process, which is why Feige didn't axe it. But where they leave it definitely leaves it open to a very big season 2. I remember catching part of an interview with IGN. They were doing a watch along party with Patton Oswalt and the other creator of the show. And Brian Altano, who was hosting it, asked the question, when you're talking to Marvel doing this show, I mean, you're doing kind of a very rated R look. So how protective were they in the sense of when you ask for characters or using them for things like that, where said, they kind of laughed at, you'd be surprised. Pretty much we thought we'd ask for something we thought they would say no to, and they said yes. It's the stuff that we thought they'd say yes to, and they said no. Like, I think they brought up like Stiltman. They said no to Stiltman, but they said yes to, I'll give a little spoiler, Wonder Man shows up in the series. They said yes to Wonder Man.
They said no to Stiltman?
They said no to, there were a couple of really deep cuts that I even had to go back to my Marvel handbook to say, who the heck is this? So for whatever reason, whatever they were going to do, but again, like you said, Mr. Sinister's in this. The stuff they do with it, again, it's not the best show. I know our buddy Travis Hines is going to be, I think his next episode for Super Discussions is going to be a series overview of MODOK. So check that out. It's Marvel content. I appreciate that Marvel letting this happen. It did not, you didn't get necessarily, the typical Marvel Studios fanfare, because it wasn't Marvel Studios that did this, but but it didn't say in association with Marvel. It just said Marvel.
Well, it was made by Marvel Entertainment.
Yeah.
In association with Marvel is Sony.
Yep.
That's what Sony gets.
Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting. It definitely was not like I said last week. I got through two and started the third episode of what's that terrible show, Hulu? God, lost it.
I don't know. I only watched a couple things on Hulu. So
no, the Marvel show. I totally just had
Hellstrom?
Hellstrom. There we go. See, I tried to purge it from my memory. It's so bad at purge it from memory. It's definitely not that awful. Not that level of bad. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Tony Hellstrom. Sorry, it's been a long week already. But check it out. It'll give you some good chuckles. It'll definitely tide you over to Loki at that point. You can't compare this. I think this is. I applaud Marvel for letting this continue. If it's getting the critical acclaim and if it gets the views, could I see this being a one and done? Sure, but they left it on a kind of a cliffhanger. But it's a funny concept in the sense of seeing a super villain having his own home life struggles. I think that was more entertaining just because we just don't see that too often.
Yeah, I will say so far the first episode has been my favorite one, but I kind of hope I've seen enough. I kind of hope it does get renewed because it is just so out there and it is fun. So, and I fully intend to finish it. There was no way I was going to be able to finish it for tonight.
Yeah. All in the game said, would you like to see MODOK sometime in the MCU proper? Oh yeah. I think
it's been rumored, hasn't it?
It's been rumored. Heck, I think at one point, and at one point he was has hinted and rumored, I shouldn't say supposed to, rumored that he was going to be a villain or somewhat of an antagonist in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't say that he still can't, but we know Kang is the main antagonist for that right now.
Right.
So it would be interesting just seeing that. Probably the most quote unquote, I guess, outrageous MCU villain we've seen. It's almost like, how do you kind of change that?
I mean, isn't that the one that Snell says will be like the most important casting because it's going to be such a weird character?
Yep, he has said that. It's and I wonder what his opinion on would be like. How is if he's watched it, does he approve of Patton Oswalt being the voice? I thought he did a good job. I could kind of it worked well. I don't know if it would work well in the MCU proper. Sabo Sanchez thought it was interesting how MODOK name dropped Roxxon in episode 1 after seeing a quick shot of the corporation in the Loki trailer. Yeah, Roxxon's just an easy one. I mean, even we had Roxxon in the Netflix universe, if I'm not mistaken.
Definitely a reference, and Roxxon was a part of Cloak and Dagger
Yep.
also.
So it's an easy kind of villain corporation of the MCU. Like AIM is, science for science sake, right?
Right.
So again, very clever at points, sometimes kind of eye rolling at different things. Oh, here we go. Oh, fanboys in the chat. Fanboy Clay, hashtag Mark Hamill for MODOK in the MCU. That
I
could be
mean,
good.
Hamill's a fantastic voice actor, so I would love to hear what voice he would apply to that.
Mm-hmm. If I can't remember the voice actor who does him in the Avengers game since I fell off that game very long time ago, so I can't even remember. But definitely more menacing. Patton Oswalt has the more comedic kind of sounding, so that way you kind of don't take the villain seriously.
Right, absolutely.
And I don't know how you can really take a villain seriously when that looks like that, unless he kind of goes off the handle, starts killing things left and right.
Well, he does. I mean, he does in this. He kills the one guy, and instead of the tax person, he kills the guy drinking the coffee.
I know. Yeah, he thought that was for everyone.
Cuts his arm off. Gary, I like Gary.
Yeah, Gary stays with you for a while on that one.
I like him.
So, but yeah, check it out. Every episode is a little bit, goes a little bit more surreal. So I'd say my best advice for those of you who haven't given it a shot, go in with absolutely no expectations. If you're expecting Robot Chicken, stop expecting that. It's going to, just because of the art style and you're thinking, oh, they're trying to be Robot Chicken. Okay, you can possibly do that, but I mean, again, Robot Chicken has its own little skits. This is kind of a long form version of it. So just going without expectations, you might have a little bit of a better time. I think I got a little ruined by seeing very high positive reviews, much higher than I was expecting for this show. So I kind of went in with that.
Yeah, there was some that were like the best Marvel show since Daredevil, and I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily believe that going into it, but just seeing the high praise for it, and some people are really loving the show, and great. I
mean, it's fun. I will give them that. Yeah. It's a fun show.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that's all our thoughts for it. If whenever Brent finishes it, if he has some changes of thought, I'm sure we'll slot that in somewhere. But yeah, those are our MODOK thoughts. Hope it'll gear some of you to it. But yeah, I'm glad Marvel at least let it get out there. So definitely we need some more Marvel animation out there. And
absolutely.
But all right, so we've got a few news items tonight. So we got one. This was kind of interesting. We don't hear a lot from Kevin Feige in the sense of mistakes or admitting things that could have been done differently too often, because again, it's not saying that he wants to he's putting himself up as being infallible, but I'm always one for companies, especially in the film industry, saying, yeah, we could have did it better. And so this came from EW. It was an article looking at basically Kevin Feige reflecting on what was whitewashing controversy on Doctor Strange's Ancient One. And this was a men's health story looking at Simu Liu and Shang-Chi, but they, you got to talk to the man of the hour, Kevin Feige. And so he was, reflecting on Tilda Swinton's casting as the Ancient One in Doctor Strange after 10 years of films with next to no Asian representation was especially vexing, since the film still placed the character in Nepal, a South Asian country. Marvel initially claimed it had chosen Swinton to prevent the character from fulfilling Asian stereotypes, which fans, myself included, I call BS on that. What did you think, Brent, when you heard that as the original explanation?
I mean, I kind of took it at face value, and I'm also kind of look at the timeline of when Doctor Strange came out in 2016, and I think about, okay, well, what happened in 2015? What happened with the MCU? The change in leadership above Feige at that point.
True.
It didn't surprise me. I'm also not going to pretend I was a Doctor Strange super fan, so I really didn't care that they were changing who the character was. And I do remember thinking, at least they didn't make it a white guy. Like that would have been so much
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'm like you. I was not a super fan of Doctor Strange necessarily, but I read enough with the Ancient One to say that I call BS on that because if they're worried about Asian stereotypes, then don't do it like that. It's very easy to not do it like that and to have the respect it is. I agree. Yes, the changeover in leadership from Feige, getting rid of the quote unquote racist who was running it at that point. But 5 years later, Kevin Feige doesn't argue with it. He says, "We thought we were being so smart and so cutting edge. We're not going to do the cliche of the wizarding old white wise Asian man. But it was a wake-up call to say, well, wait a minute. Is there any other way we could figure it out? Is there any other way to both not fall into the cliche and cast an Asian actor?" And the answer to that is, of course, yes. Marvel Studios head of the company noted the long list of great characters who could make great movies, regardless of how famous they were. He goes on to the idea that it's about having a foot in both worlds, in North America world and in China, and we want to make sure at this point with him kind of in full reins that they can start correcting those wrongs that they didn't get right in the beginning. And again, having Shang-Chi is one step in the right direction. We'll put a maybe on that because our next story kind of talks about that a little bit, but I'm just more impressed that he acknowledges it, that they could have done better.
Yeah, absolutely. This kind of thing is nobody's perfect at it. We should, as a society, be growing and getting better and seeing these opportunities for improvement and looking back at a time and saying, if he had gone back and said, this was perfect, I don't regret a thing, we could not have done better, that I would have an issue with. But him saying we kind of missed the mark on that one, I have a lot of respect for that.
Mm-hmm. The game brings up a very good point. Was initially done to not to upset China with using a Tibetan actor / character. Writer Robert C. Cargill talked about it on Double Toasted years ago. Didn't know that, but thank you for bringing that up. Thank you all in the game for that one. I had no idea about that. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing that a lot of times, and fairly recently, we just saw a thing that John Cena had to basically, when he called Tibet a country and it really ticked off the Chinese, he had to recant in video, basically acknowledging his mistake. And that's pretty controversial in the sense of that, people say, why are companies bending to the will of China? It's not right, but they're running a business and they are going to lane towards their dollars and cents of what they need to get from China. And it's the unfortunate nature of the world we live in right now.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's such a confusing thing of how much should people and companies bend to the will of China, but at the same time, they are a business. China is currently the largest theatrical market in the world. You kind of want to be there.
Yeah. I mean, again, personal feelings aside at that point, I don't like it, but again, I'm not the one running the ship, again, and I'm sure, people say, well, people would then come back and say, well, they need to put their money where their mouth is. Not arguing that point. This is just what we've seen over and over again when it comes to, if you want to do business in China, you're going to play by their rules or they will lock you out.
Right.
I mean, we've seen it with movies. What was it? The Suicide Squad wasn't allowed in there. And they didn't want to make the changes they did because of different scenes. They didn't want it. The name itself was a problem, so they didn't air, and it still was hugely successful. But imagine what it would have been like money-wise if they did get in China.
Yeah, and to Marvel, China has always been a very important market. Marvel they really like Marvel movies in China, so they want to be there, which kind of makes this next story, a little more interesting.
Yeah, so this is a couple of weeks this came out a couple of weeks ago. We've had kind of bigger stories and bigger news items that kind of push it aside, but with the Kevin Feige quote, I decided to bring it back in to talk about it. Variety put out an article a couple of weeks ago titled "Why Marvel's Shang-Chi and Eternal movies might not even release in China. Reports revealed that Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings and Eternals weren't included in an upcoming MCU movie list for the CCTV6 China movie channel. China does not operate as a free market in cinema. All foreign films seeking release in Chinese theaters must receive government approval and pass censorship. There are also separate quotas for films imported on flat fee terms, and those, such as Hollywood studio titles, seeking a more lucrative revenue sharing release through a state owned distributor. So the question is, why these two films? They go into detail that Chloe Zhao was born in China, but has been very critical of the country, calling it a place where there are lies everywhere. China's authorities actually blacked out the news that she won the Academy Award and removed Nomadland, her film that she won the Academy Award for, from being released in China. Variety also cites Fu Manchu, the original villain and father of Shang-Chi in the comics, as a lingering embodiment of quote-unquote yellow peril stereotype. Despite Fu Manchu not being in the movie, Variety wrote that in China is not aware that Fu Manchu will be reworked as the Mandarin, and many people just don't care in there. They say, although the Mandarin is not the same person as Fu Manchu, it's still under the shadow of Fu Manchu, an official from the Communist Youth League Proper China Youth Daily warned back in 2019. Even under the announcement that the character has changed, the controversy continues in China. Marvel wants Shang-Chi to earn money from global audiences, but faces a big challenge. The film itself will decide whether it will end up in tears or laughter. They also, I think there were some hints of they just don't care much for, Simu Liu, Aquafina. They think that, I think even the teaser trailer did come out a couple weeks back. There was a lot of pushback from, I guess, people watching in China. And I think they said, like, they seem to forget that what we claim as the first Asian American centric superhero movie, it's just like, we do that all the time here in China. It's not a big deal for us as it is for you. So I don't know. I mean, again, it could just be China playing hardball at this point.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think if I had to guess, I would say both movies are going to be there. I think what's going to ultimately happen is Disney and whoever is in charge of this at China is going to sit down and work out a deal, and maybe there'll be slight differences to the cuts or whatever. That has certainly happened for years, where for movies to get into China, there's subtle differences. They have to add one thing or take one thing out. And I think it's worth noting that Disney does a lot of business, like All in the Game mentions here, a lot of business outside of just the movies with like theatrical or with parks, amusement parks, theme parks. Thank you. That's not really a relationship that China is probably going to want to squash too much, because it's lucrative for China as well.
It's a game. It's a game. It's a game all the time. No pun intended for your name all in the game, but it is. It's a business game that's saying they want to throw around their weight to see, like, how badly do you want your stuff here? Because we'll get along quite fine. China said we'll get along quite fine. At that point, we'll continue playing ball. But if you want to do what you want to do here, that's why, some people had a theory. We didn't mention during the Eternals trailer, you didn't see anything from Chloe Zhao, from the Academy Award winning director of Nomadland, or from the Academy Award director of Chloe Zhao. There were no title cards for any other actors or actresses there. People are kind of doing their tinfoil hat, saying, "Oh, this is them trying to save face with China and things like that."
Yeah, I don't buy that.
I don't buy that for at all. Do I think it was a goof that they should have done it? A little bit. I think they could have, like, really propped it up. But Brent, you had a very good point in our group chat when a lot of us were mentioning that. I want to give your kind of, because I think it's really spot on
about Chloe Zhao.
Yes.
Here's the thing. One, we are still months away from this movie. Two, they didn't mention anybody. You have Angelina Jolie in this movie, and you don't mention her in the teaser trailer. I don't buy this as some hiding who the director is nonsense. No, the later trailers will have that. They will mention the star-studded cast they have, and they will mention their new Oscar-winning director, best director. They're going to mention that stuff. I haven't gone back and looked yet, but I'd be curious to know how many teaser trailers really do highlight the cast, the actors, the crew, the directors. Not to mention, when's the last time you saw a Marvel trailer that said from the director of such and such that wasn't referring to another Marvel project? From the director of Captain America the Winter Soldier comes Civil War.
Yeah.
Sure, that kind of thing, but I don't remember the last time I saw one of those.
Yeah, Shang-Chi didn't even have any title cards, even announcing like cast and anything like that. All in the Game brings up, primarily Zhao's comments, but also they seem to think Simu Liu and Aquafina aren't quote unquote good looking enough. They have a absurd beauty and standards over there. You're exactly right. Yeah, I do remember seeing that comment as well. And it's just, and I found a joke if it was true on one of the posters they released. Chloe Zhao's name is listed twice for, I think, writing or directing.
It's for writing, and that has to do with those weird writer guild rules.
Yeah,
where if it's the writer and A&D, someone else, it's like two separate passes at the script. But if it's the writer ampersand another writer, then they're a team. And I might have that backwards, but regardless, like it is weird. And I'm like, can't they just put it on there once? Because it does look weird. And for the record, I just looked at the first teaser trailer for Black Widow. No mention of the cast or of cast or director or anything like that. They don't like. It's weird because it's like people were looking for stuff to just harp on about this trailer that wasn't there. And I feel like there is a question to ask, and that is, why release it now with so many other projects still to come? Because there's nothing actionable. I can't go buy tickets for it. When people will buy tickets to this movie when they find out the Academy Award winning best director is who directed it. Like that will get people to buy tickets. People will buy tickets when they're like, oh, Angelina Jolie, Kumail Nanjiani, like they will sell tickets. Just their names alone will sell tickets.
I mean, just announcing that cast. I mean, you heard me basically spend time just going over descriptions of each one of them. It's like, that's like 30 seconds, almost 45 seconds just for the cast alone, but naming every one of them.
Tickets aren't on sale yet. It doesn't matter. Trailers are not for us typically. They're typically like the real trailers are for the GA, the general audience, to let people know. I almost feel like these little teaser trailers are for us because they don't give you much, just a glimpse, and the general public doesn't care. Yeah. They don't care about the Marvel movie 4 Marvel movies from now when they have other Marvel projects between now and then to look forward to. They're not looking past maybe Black Widow, but probably not even past Loki at this point.
And I think the only reason that they probably released this is to, they're in this kind of lead up to Loki. I think as we end this week heading into next week, it's all going to be Loki. Like we're starting to see, like I think either Film or Empire is doing a big expose on Loki that actually has some new updates on Spider-Man and No Way Home. So I'll be very curious on Friday when that drops what those updates are. So I think this was just a week saying, how can we be a part of the conversation and keep Marvel in people's front of the minds as we march towards Loki? That's my only theory at this point of why they dropped this.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm very happy to have seen it. I'm just like right now, to me, it's not a question of why didn't they put Chloe's name on it. They're not hiding it from China. China knows who's directing this movie.
They can't hide it. They know. So we'll see exactly what happens. I think this is a game of chicken, and I don't foresee these two Marvel movies not making it into the Chinese box office. It's just a game.
I will be truly surprised if they're not there.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, those are our news items. So before we get to listener question, we're going to take our last ad break of the night. So listeners, these ads keep the lights on in the Geek Ultimate Alliance network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they can be a bit loud. So we're going to give that 3 count to turn the volume down so that way they don't blow out your eardrums. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. So Brent, you're always putting up the signal, the Spidey signal for the listener questions. We got a good few of them. So
we did.
Why don't you kind of lead us off with who we got up first? What questions we got?
All right. Well, first up from Fanboy Clay, co-host of DC Alliance, says, "What do you prefer, new original characters or variations of characters in a new way?" An example would be Null, a new character from the recent Venom run, or Cosmic Ghost Rider, a variation of a character, a variation of a couple characters. As a reader, what would you like to see more? Give an example, excluding Cosmic Ghost Rider. Here's the thing. I think most people are going to answer this question with give us new, give us original. But I think deep down, most people would prefer to have the variation of something they already know because it's more familiar. They're already connected to it. That's
Mhm.
that's what I think people would say. Honestly, I probably would prefer the variation on the character I've already seen before. I get it's more comfortable. It's what people know. But that doesn't mean I don't like the new characters. I haven't read King and Black yet, but Noel is he's what I've seen of him up to now.
Mhm.
I've enjoyed quite a bit. Variation on an existing character other than Cosmic Ghost Rider. I mean, for me, is Miles Morales has to be
Yeah.
number one, right? I love that
Mhm.
character, and he's Spider-Man, and his origin is so similar to Peter's, but he is also his own character. So they are similar but different. I mean, maybe it's almost a cop out for me, the Spider-Man fan, but I gotta go with Miles.
Yeah, I think when it comes to new characters, it's got to be how what's the tie? What's the hook? What does this have to do with, is it entirely quote unquote a new character like I say a Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, without like just okay, the she takes her name from what Carol Danvers was at one point in the comics. So that's a connection, but like for all intents and purposes, an entirely new character. Amalgam characters or like something like a twist on the characters. I'm I'm big into the whole what if kind of thing. I think one of my favorite series or favorite kind of Earth looking at it would be kind of like Earth X from Alex Ross and Kurt Busiek. Those kind of like seeing lineages of like who are the next in line from this you know from the superheroes. I mean, look, all new Wolverine, X-23, Laura Kinney. You know, that is a quote a new character, but she's a clone of Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that. So I don't know which necessarily. And there we go, fanboy Clay. I mean, Laura is newly fan favorite for Wolverine. I totally get it. Like I said, I think with a new character, it just defines as are we going entirely new or are we trying to give some sort of tip of the hat they're connected to someone? Amalgamations, I'm cool with that. I don't like you got me on the Cosmic Ghost Rider is definitely one of my favorites. Um, the others, it's just like I'm there just to see how does this story work. Like I'll do another one. I'm loving the current run of America Chavez. I love what they're trying to do with it. I love how they're broadening her story as we ramp up to her introduction into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So and you got a good point too, Clay, that we're getting also variations of the characters in Heroes Reborn right now too. Yeah, exactly. And some of the ones like you have, the Doctor Doom having the Kitterak crystal, Juggernaut's crystal, basically, and his Juggerdoom.
Really?
Oh yeah,
The
yeah.
Crimson Gem of Sidorak, I
Yep,
believe it is.
yes, the Crimson Gem of
I
Sidorak.
I'll check all that out when it hits unlimited.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yep. So yeah, you get I think Red Skull and Venom, I believe, at that point. So, yeah, you're exactly right. So that's going to be very interesting at that point. Oh, we got a new one joining. Wonder Meg, how you doing, Meg? Says, hey guys, just stopping in. Hope you're having a great stream. Don't know much about the Eternals, but I really like the trailer. Well, good. It's definitely going to be an interesting look. But I appreciate you stopping by. Um, so yeah, I take them both. I'll take them both at that point. It just depends. So our next question coming from Joe. We know Black Widow takes place before Infinity War, the Eternals after Endgame, and Shang-Chi possibly during the 5 years in between. Do you think the movies or Disney Plus properties going forward will take place before Endgame? If so, which ones? Hmm.
All right, so yeah, Black Widow's before Infinity War and
Yeah.
supposed to be primarily post Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
Eternals, honestly, we don't really know where the bulk of the storyline takes place. We just know part of it's post in game. For
Yeah.
all we know, most of it's going to be 100 years earlier, 1,000 years earlier. Regardless, I still like your idea of Shang-Chi being during the blip. Um, I I honestly don't think anything announced is going to primarily take place prior to Endgame. I think we might get glimpses of that time.
Hmm.
Like at some point, it was rumored we were going to see something in hot with Hawkeye, like from his Ronin time as Ronin.
Yeah.
And so, like, I could see that, but as for the bulk of the story, to the point where you would say the story takes place in, I don't think anything announced. At the same time, if Shang-Chi isn't, I would love to see something during the blip. I think that would be awesome to see.
Yeah.
So I love the idea. I just like I'm looking at the Phase 4 slate right now in front of me, and I can't pick one out that would maybe go there. Um
Yeah. It's yeah. Outside of Shang-Chi, which just I'm just kind of pulling tinfoil hat of what we're seeing and how we're seeing it. I
Fantastic Four, maybe.
maybe at
Maybe.
that point, but I think here's my problem with I think we're going to get to the point where we have to move on from Endgame. We it's almost like talking about the big joke in the Netflix series, like, oh, the incident in New York. Oh my gosh, how much longer are we going to talk about like what happened in Avengers? They're gonna have to move on from that concept. They're gonna have to move on from that time and start going into it. Not saying like we have to forget about what happened in game because it was obviously the snap, what happened, very huge, very altering at that point. But there comes a point to saying, okay, we got to start moving on from that. Acknowledge it happened, moving on. Let's start going on to the next big thing. So we don't know the time period for Miss Marvel. I'm thinking it's post Endgame. I don't foresee. I that's at least my call. I don't foresee it happening during Endgame, before Endgame. I think this is basically post Endgame.
I completely agree about Miss Marvel. Yeah, it because she's got to fangirl out about Carol. She's
Hmm.
not going to know who Carol was until post in game.
Yeah. So yeah, I just don't see many. I don't see many. But
Nothing yet, but I would love it if someday they went back to it.
mhm.
I know some people, Travis, don't like prequels and stuff. I'm not opposed to it. I don't need that entire 5 year time span filled in, but a story definitively set in that time, I'm totally open to it.
Yeah. Want to hit the next question from your buddy Brock?
Yes, Brock says, what kind of mid or end credit scene do we think Eternals will have? Will be they tied into the greater MCU? I mean, of course they will. Of course they'll tie it. But for real, what kind do we have? I mean, Marvel they have 3 or 4 different styles for their credit scenes. There's the serious one about that cast, the joke about that cast, or sometimes they just pull a clip from another movie, right? Um, honestly, I think I feel like we're going to get a Doctor Strange one in either Eternals or Spider-Man No Way Home. I give it to Spider-Man No Way Home more because Strange is supposed to be in that. But I feel like one way or the other, we're going to see something there. So for right now, because I don't have the one I like better, I'm going to predict something related to that. But actually, I'm going to save that thought for a fact or fiction. So you go. I'm going to let me write that down.
All right. My prediction would be being we kept on saying cosmic, cosmic, cosmic. I'm going
Like,
Fantastic Four.
there you go. I like it. I
I'm
like it.
going with the scientists. We're gonna get our first introduction, our scenes of a Reed Richards at the very least.
Wow, that's calling your shot. I like it. I'm on board.
Again, I'm just taking a guess. Just seeing, reading, the tea leaves, playing with my chicken bones at that point, seeing exactly, where they lie. But all this kind of cosmic energy going around at that point, someone's got to be seeing what the effects of it are and how to harness it. Who better that person than Reed Richards?
Absolutely. And it could be something like totally unrelated, or it could be like Val, don't call her Val, showing up and talking to Druig, right?
Yep.
Like trying to recruit Druig for something. Like the credit scenes are hard to pin down because they could be about anything.
Yep.
They don't have to be directly related to the Eternals. They could be anything.
And sometimes you get the a lot of times Marvel will do two. One's kind of a jokey ha 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 kind of thing, and then one
Right.
usually does tie into whatever. It may not be directly to the next movie, but a next project. So
Right. Like Ant-Man and the Wasp had the snap one, and then the drum playing ant in the other
yeah,
one. Like one's serious, one not so much.
yep, exactly. All right, our last question comes from Tony at Walkator93. When MODOK gets introduced in the MCU, do you think we will get a nod or connection to Iron Man 3? So if you remember way back in Iron Man 3, Killian was his company was AIM.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, will we get a nod to it? Sure, he took it over.
He took it over and he's out for revenge on Iron Man. That's kind of what I want.
Yeah, exactly. I think they like doing the head nods. Like you brought up with one of your Factor fictions. Are we gonna get Herbie at that point? Of course.
Yes.
You're gonna get a head nod at that point. So if we get MODOK, which would be really awesome, I'd love to see that in live action. Yeah, he's too much tied to AIM to not have it. So then that's his baby. Science for science sake. So all right, so those are our questions. So let me pull out my handy dandy phone to pull up the Factor Fictions last week. All right. So Factor Fiction number 1, the first X-Men team spinoff project will be X Factor, not X Force. 46% said fact, 54% said fiction. Like I said, I said fact just because I'd say the government wants, if once Mutant comes on the scene, they want to control it. I think you were fact, but not by much.
That sounds about right. Yep. Just a little bit.
Factor Fiction number 2, the Kingpin will be first introduced in the Spider-Man movie in the MCU before being included in a future Daredevil project. 70% said fact, 30% said fiction. So sounds like pretty much all of them are expecting the Kingpin to show first in Spider-Man. And the last one, the Fantastic Four will be revealed to be on the separate Earth in Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness and end up staying on the MCU Earth, which I just decided to throw a little nerd knowledge on this one. The MCU Earth is designated as Earth 199999. The 24% said fact, 76% said fiction. Apparently, I'm full of it. I also said fiction on this one. I see Tony actually replied on this one. I can actually see this being with more of mutants than Fantastic Four. Yep, I think we've also talked about that theory as well. So, all right. Your week, Brent. What you got?
All right. So, number 1, on the assumption the MCU and the SPUMC do not merge or come together.
You really have to use that.
I do. SPUMC. On the assumption they do not merge at all.
Okay.
The SPUMC will have its own Spider-Man.
Yes, fact. I say fact on that one. That is the I mean, why do that is the reason they're holding on to this biggest product. That's the IP.
I phrased it that way on purpose.
Yeah.
I think it's a fact too. Where I would question it is which Spider-Man will it be? Will it be a version of Peter like Andrew Garfield, a brand new actor? Will it be a different Spider-Man entirely like Miles Morales? That I wasn't willing to put in there, but I do think a Spider-Man will happen.
I think a Spider-Man can happen, and they can easily do that with being their first one up as Miles and still have Peter exist, but we don't get to see their quote unquote Peter until maybe the end of that film. Or just you see they do the kind of silly thing. You see the shadows at that point. Supergirl season 1, you never saw Superman. You had the little kind of discussions at that point.
You saw his boots. You saw his boots.
Saw his boots at that point. So people say boo hiss at that point, but Miles is a big enough character, has become a big enough character to carry his own movie. Obviously, the animated movie was completely fine. Yes, it had Peter Parker in it, but Miles was the star of that movie and did quite well carrying out. So I say give it to Miles. Let Sony say that we can do it and we can do it differently and celebrate who Miles is.
Yep, I would be good with that. Okay, next up, inspired by Eternals. We will see a young Thanos in the Eternals in a scene that is set in the past.
I will say yes, and the only my only reason for that is that kind of traveling Marvel show that had been going around last year that directly referenced Thanos' connection to the Eternals. So
I think it's going to happen. I will we see Josh Brolin? I don't know, but I do think we will be known. Like they will connect that dot that Thanos is one of them.
yeah, I mean, you could go the easy route and just say it's not connected, but think why? That's such it's a comic nugget. It's a comic truth at that point. It's too good not to at least have an appearance, a reference, a
Not just
backstory.
not just that, but Thanos was the villain of Marvel's two biggest movies.
Yeah,
And so of the two biggest comic book movies of all time. And so yeah, get him in there because the general audience knows who he is. You don't have to have just a little tease of like, hey, remember this guy? He was one of them.
yeah,
That's all they
eh,
need.
yeah. I mean, again, like we said, it'll just be very easy for them to do. All right, what's
And
your last one?
last one, uh, thought of this during Brock's question about credit scenes. We will get a credit scene in a movie. We will see a movie credit scene that's leading into a Disney Plus show.
Hmm. I will say fact on that. And I seen this because it made me very happy at the end of MODOK, and they need to do this more, is plugging their comic properties. At the end of almost every episode of MODOK, they'll say, read the comic now that Patton Oswalt and the creators of the show have done for the show at that point. Build in, go see Disney Plus. You're not a subscriber. Here's everything we're offering Disney Plus. You want to learn about the Eternals? Subscribe to Marvel Unlimited. They need to start. Disney Plus. Always can do more promotion, but they can do more with their other streaming platform, Marvel Unlimited. So yes, I agree. I think that would be a really different move, but it would also gear other people who haven't gone on Disney Plus to get on that train.
Yeah, I probably should have put some kind of timeline on this in 3 years and 5 years or
Yeah.
whatever. I will say this: I think it'll happen by the end of Phase 4. So
Okay.
I'm going to say fact, and I'm going to say I think it'll happen by the end of Phase 4. To me, it makes sense. It's a good way to promote those shows. Obviously, we know those shows matter. Characters from the movies are going to show up in the shows and then jump back to the movies. But this would be a way to tell people, hey, there's more of this. But put like tease tease Ms. Marvel or something in a credit scene. And it could even say Ms. Marvel will appear on Disney Plus,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Now, are you willing to, pick your shot and see what upcoming one could do it,
Oh, that's dirty.
well,
That's dirty.
how about this? How about this? Pick either an upcoming project that is announced, or do you think it's going to be the first one to do it is something that we don't know about yet? You don't have to name it if either one. You could just pick which side.
I'm looking at the movies and the announced shows right now. I wish I knew when Secret Invasion was going to come out. Because is Secret Invasion before Captain Marvel 2?
No, I think that's supposed to lead into Captain Marvel 2.
Okay, so so not that one. Man, you're killing me here.
Sorry.
All right. Thor Love and Thunder is going to give one of those credit scenes will be a tease for Disney Plus.
Okay.
I'm saying that one.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right. Well, those are some good ones. So I will post those Sunday afternoon. Let us know what y'all think at that point, and I will come up with some next week. Maybe I'll come up with, as we lead in towards Loki, maybe some Loki theory ones at that point. Supposedly Kevin Feige backtracked from how Loki's connected. Not really, but
yeah, not really.
he kind of got a little coy about it. So, all right. So we are at Comic Book Club, the last issue, Ultimate 6, number 7. Again, a reminder, next week, in preparation, as we start heading towards Loki, we will start reading Loki, Agent of Asgard. It is a 17-issue series. We will read 3 issues a week. So get ready for next week. We're going to lead right into that one, and I'm excited. But let's close out Ultimate 6, number 7.
Okay, can we just acknowledge, and I think I mentioned this last week, the absurdity of letting Harry Osborn show up in this situation.
Yeah,
okay, you've got this hulking monster in Green Goblin who's attacking the White House, let's send the 15, 16-year-old kid on there to try and get him stuff. I know what they were going for. And I'm not saying it's bad writing or anything like that, but I'm just like, Nick Fury, you have got better ideas. Come on.
Yeah, yeah. Especially it's not just a hulking monster. The hulking monster that's on fire has arrows coming, in and out of him in all different ways, shapes, or forms, and he's glowing eyes. So yeah, let's just try it. What's the worst that could happen?
And of course, it was actually working, to the hindsight's 2020 benefit of that. It was working, and then Iron Man screwed it up. But
Can we replace Iron Man and then Star-Lord? A Star-Lord
no,
moment.
no, we cannot. This is totally Iron Man's fault. Star Lord. There were like 17 different ways that Thanos could have been stopped in that movie, and if they had just been willing to trade, I'm not going on that tangent. But regardless, this is Iron Man's fault.
Yeah, it was. Instead, he just ticked him off even more at that point. I especially liked like all of a sudden, like, you get Cap shield, you get guns going off at that point, taking him down. And then all of a sudden Thor comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, Thor comes out of nowhere. And he just kind of shows up, and that's when they're all like, maybe it's later, but it's like, is that Electro? Is that Thor? I like that moment.
Yeah, but I like the moment that Peter and Harry are giving Harry a hug, and he said you didn't deserve it, and then Harry goes, all of you, I'll kill all of you for this. And Peter's just taken aback, and the enemy is born.
They really wrap up like the fight pretty quickly.
I'd almost call it a little disappointing in the sense.
You would expect it to go a little long. Like I had not read this in years, and I was like, okay, I remember the broad strokes, but I didn't remember how quickly that wrapped up. But I had forgotten about a scene that I absolutely love, and that's the Dr. Octopus scene when they're like, oh, arms, and they're buried and they're cut up and melted down, and he's like, no, I can feel them. And they end with just, you better move those things farther away.
Yeah, they're only 30 miles away. They're only 30 miles away from here. Yeah, move them, destroy them, do something better with them. And you get Peter, reuniting with Aunt May at that point, but Harry, Norman's in cryogenic frozen at that point. But I love the conversation that Nick has with Captain America, Steve Rogers. Steve says, just put a bullet in the back of his neck. And I was just like, wow, Steve, this is not I keep on forgetting. This is a little more vicious Steve Rogers than we get in 616.
Yeah, he's a little more hardcore for sure.
Yeah. But Nick goes, no, sorry, Captain, not until we get everything from his DNA that we need. He says, right, because the next war will be a genetic war. That's right. And Steve goes, being a veteran, being a creation of war, it occurred to me. It's men of influence and power that decide about what these wars will be about. They decide who we're going to fight and how we're going to fight them. And then they go about planning the fight. In a sense, really, these people of power will will the war into existence.
Yeah, kind of a somber note to leave on as Captain America. He doesn't hold any punches, and metaphorical or physical, he lays it all out there.
I also liked how in the press conference, everyone's like the press secretary is praising Nick Fury. The president stands by Nick Fury.
Yes, when we saw that was very much not the case.
Yeah, no, it's like, you're going to do this and I'm going to dismantle you and you're going to be reporting to me. I'm tired of this. It's a tune kind of changed when the fight comes to your doorstep, right?
Yeah, funny how that works.
Yeah. So, looking at the series, it'd been a while since both of us had read this series. What, looking at it now, where do you kind of put this now?
I still really enjoy it. I feel like for the Ultimate Sinister Six, we could have had a little bit more time with them as a group. Mm-hmm. We never really see that collective again in the Ultimate line, and we see individual subsets of it, but as a group, we don't really see them more. I would have liked to have seen a follow up to this series. Maybe one where, because later Harry does eventually become Hobgoblin.
Yep.
And maybe one where Norman gets the band back together and brings in Harry this time.
Mm-hmm. And I think my disappointment in this series kind of leads a little bit to yours, but I think there was way too long of a setup. This was a long game, and by the time we got to the fight, as we said, is like barely an issue of a fight.
Yeah, the setup is really strong, but it almost seemed like they needed one or two more issues of the actual fights, or a couple more smaller interactions
Yeah.
between the Ultimates and the Sinister Six, or the Ultimate Six, whatever they're calling them. Just a little bit more. If this had been like 3 to 4 more issues total, I would have liked that.
Yeah, I think the setup was good. It just seemed like by the time we got to the fight, it was like, oh shoot, we only have so much time. We got to get it in. It
Yeah,
just I
yeah.
think that was my disappointment. I'm a big story person, so I think they did a good setup with it, but some of it they could have cut back and built it better. So I'm with you. It's definitely not obviously not the worst thing ever, but
Oh no.
I think it went down just a little bit in my eyes reflecting on it and getting another chance to read it. But again, I've read lots of other things that are better than this, at least this arc at that point. But again, it is a good arc. If you take Ultimate Spider-Man as a whole, this is a key part of it. But to your point, it's kind of sad that this is the one and only time we get to see a quote unquote Sinister Six in the Ultimate Universe. I think that's a ball that was dropped.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
No. But all right. So like we said, next week, Loki, Agent of Asgard. It's gonna be let's get crazy. Let's get nuts.
Yeah, 3 issues a week. I'm now ready to download them and start that absurdity.
Yeah, with all how busy I was last week, and I did not get a chance to do any reading last week outside of this one issue. So I've got so next weekend I'm getting back on board with my Venom reread, starting this one, get my Green Lantern action back on.
I lied. I read an issue of Zdarsky's Daredevil, whatever the most recent Unlimited is. I did, so gotcha. I read a couple.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've reading. Actually, it's new issues, but my goodness, I'll tell you what, they're rebranding. What If? At that point, they're bringing back What If, but instead of one shots, Zdarsky's got his first crack at it. Looking at Spider-Man, it's called Spider Shadow Spider, I think. I'm gonna have to look it up because it's gonna bug me. But basically, what if Peter didn't give up the symbiote costume?
Okay, so that's what that is. Yeah. I knew that Zdarsky was doing a Spider-Man story soon, but I hadn't looked into it too much again because I'm 3 months behind on everything. And it's Spider-Man's Spider Shadow is what
Spider called. Shadow. There we go. Because I knew it was like a play on words at that point. But man, Zdarsky's I agree. He's awesome with what he's doing with Daredevil. I love this way of doing What If instead of the one shot build, because that's what my always thing with one shots. It was just like, I want more. There's sometimes it does really well, but 5 issues to kind of look at this whole thing. I mean, he did a bang up job looking at that series, Spider-Man Life Story.
Oh yeah.
So they're doing one right now. They just did issue 1 either this week or last week. Fantastic Four is getting a life story. So not by Zdarsky though. I can't remember who the writing team on that one is. So, but yeah. So, anyways, we trailed off into what are we reading now? All right, that's okay. But yeah. So volume 50, 50 at that point. Hope again. I'm glad. Kevin Feige knew our big episode was coming up, so he gave us this trailer to go into. So, but want to, I guess, again, as we say our goodbyes and do our kind of where we can find us, step on again, plug in our official sponsor, organicpricebooks.com, again, for all your collected edition needs. Organicpricebooks.com. Use the card Marvel GUA at checkout for $2 off every single order. Ships US and internationally. Mr. Snell can attest to that. He got his all new stuff, all new Wolverine from JP and Organic Price Books. So check them out. Brent, why don't you remind people how they can follow you?
Sure. I'm on Twitter at BrentTech Prime, and I co-host bi-weekly show Fans Without Borders.
All right. Yep. And you had a new episode this week. So
we did. My voice was a little stronger for that one, but I paid for it afterwards.
And he unfortunately is going to pay for it after this.
yes,
I will. You do it for the people. The people.
The people.
Yes, the people. So yes, you can follow me on Twitter at Chris Balga. You can follow this show on Twitter at Marvel A Podcast. You can follow excuse me, you can email the show at Marvel Alliance Podcast at gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on GUA Pod Network. Feel free to tweet, email if you want to provide fact or fictions, ask questions, continue to rate and review the network on Apple Podcasts, whichever platform of choice may be. One little thing I think, and Mr. Snell might have to say something about this, watch your feeds on the 31st. The GUA is making a little bit of some changes, and Marvel Alliance is part of that change. So it's going to be for the better and for the good of the network. So keep an eye on your feeds. I'll put that on Mr. Snell. Maybe he can give a little hint towards that if he has an end credits scene to talk about. So again, thank you, listeners. Thank you, those of you who joined the chat. For some of our first timers joining the chat, thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe out there, everyone. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers. All right, Brent. If Clay's still listening, he might have thought my opinion on this question was the reason we didn't talk about it. I still have the same opinion on the question, but I want to at least honor those of even people on our network that asked the questions. We're going to do the question, but we decided our end credit sequence is going to be answering his question. You wake up and you're Kevin Feige. What do?
Wow, I was thinking about this question at work today when we decided this was, one we were going to talk about. And I'm like, initially, I'm like, number one is like confirm hardcore, bring in Daredevil. And then I'm like, I actually don't know. Like, it's not that I wouldn't do it. It's just like, where do you draw the line between what do I personally wish and what makes business sense? I came up with one idea, though. One idea that I do like, and I would love it if it happened, but I think it makes sense as well. I would do a mini Annihilation event. I would have a movie.
You took one of my choices.
I would have a movie to introduce Nova, one for Silver Surfer, and one for Super Skrull. Mm-hmm. And then I would bring them all together for Annihilation. And like the comic, take place out in the cosmos. Doesn't take place on Earth. It's nothing with that. Maybe you could have a couple of the Earth characters if they were in space with the Guardians or something. But that's the big one that I came up with.
Yeah, I would say that was one of my ones go to. I was thinking Brent won't choose that. He'll go something Spider-Man or something. He'll go something Daredevil. Not so much.
My other ideas are around the X-Men.
Oh, okay, yeah. So my other one wasn't as strong, but I would say trying to think now. I've got choices at this point, but you took my strongest one. I would say I want Marvel to go in much stronger with animation.
Okay.
I want them to really, really go into there and kind of done what DC's done very well, in my opinion. I haven't watched, but like the Superman, the new Superman one from the DC animated universe at that point. But I'm really excited to finally get to watch in the next couple of weeks the Justice Society one, Justice Society in World War II. I like the idea. Say what you want about connected universe. It works for Marvel. I want them to do something with their animated universe, whether it be more in television or just do the movies. Do your one-off movies. Do things you can do, like storylines that you say, I don't know if it's strong enough for a live action movie, but for animated, we can really do something different with it. Imagine if they could do the Dark Phoenix saga better in animation than they can in live action.
Oh, that wouldn't be a problem at all. That's been done better in animation. So you referenced DC. DC, I don't know if they have a name for this, but they had like their canon of movies from like Flashpoint Paradox up through
the DC
Justice League
animated
Dark,
universe.
Right?
The DC animated universe, yeah.
Would you want a connected 20 movie thing like that from Marvel, or?
I mean, I wish, and DC did this very well. They had some movies that were connected, some movies that weren't. At that point, there were a couple of one-offs. So I'd like a healthy mix. Just say that, hey, this is a one-off story at that point. We may decide to bring this character in and proper at that point, but they're just there doing their own thing. Not necessarily. It's not necessarily not canon, but it's just like they're doing their own thing right now. Not like a Venom saying, "Oh, they just don't know who Spider-Man is," you know. But I like a healthy mix. Just again, doing that. But yeah, I'm down for a connected universe with animation at that point. Gives them some more gives and let them. You can go about it two ways. I don't know what your opinion on this. Would you want to see one animation style or like to see different animation styles throughout a connected universe?
If it was connected for animation, I would prefer similar style. It wouldn't have to be like the exact same animation team, but I want them to look like they're cut from the same mold.
Okay.
That said, if you're doing that, go off the reservation with your side movies, with the
Yeah.
other movies, and show us the crazy, weird, different animation styles at that point.
And that's why I want some one-offs that don't have to be connected. Give those animators lean into different genres that are starting to pick up some steam. But like you put that Marvel stamp on a certain animation style and a certain writer at that point that hasn't been seen. My gosh, that's their calling card if it hits really well. Gives it to a new audience. So I'm all about bringing that kind of creative content. But my problem with these questions, and because I see it all from time to time, and you brought up an interesting perspective on it, even though when we come up with these ideas, you and I, we are not saying that Marvel is doing a bad job. It's just something we'd like to see. But who was the creator that came up with a different perspective on these types of questions?
Well, I think it was Ron Mars who basically just said, I don't answer them because people are in those jobs now and it could be deemed offensive.
Yeah. It's an interesting perspective in the sense of depending on how you do it, because if you put a little, basically, as some fans would say, put a little stank on it, you're making it like they're doing a bad job. They should be doing this, should be doing this. We're not saying they should be doing it. It would be nice to see them doing this.
I mean, they should be introducing Daredevil, but
Yes.
other than that,
Other than that, again, things happen, Netflix deals, and all that jazz. But, you know, do you and I agree with everything Marvel does? Absolutely not. You know, we would do it differently. But again, we're not the one. I'm not going to play Monday morning quarterback. So, well, if I were in charge, this, that, and the other. Well, of course. Guess what? Hindsight's 2020.
I mean, they are fun hypotheticals.
Yes.
I don't like it when people jump to like I would fire so and so and fire this person and get rid of them. And no, but what would I do? It's like the other idea I was leaning for was I actually don't think I would do this, but I would like it, is a 6-episode X-Men Disney Plus show where the first 5 episodes that you introduced a different character and they
Like
came
that.
together in the last one.
Mhm.
But business wise, the X-Men should be in the movies.
Yeah. That's a moneymaker. You could put smaller X projects on Disney Plus. Like I propose like a Generation X, Mutant Academy at that point, different things like that. So, but yeah, so those are some ideas that we would do. So thank you for the question, Clay. And again, thank you all for listening. We appreciate it. And we will catch you next week. Bye bye, everyone.
See you later.